Have you ever wanted to code a melee combo system in your game? You start out thinking it's a very easy task, only to realize that the vast majority of solutions you can think of result in animations freeze, attacks constantly looping, and your whole system just breaks down. So perhaps you'll start researching on the internet, only to find out that the solutions offered have serious timing issues and rely on overcomplicated methods. I'm Luca from ChosenPlay, and in this video I'm going to tell you how I coded my own 2D melee combo system with no timers, no coroutines, and really just a few lines of code. The logic behind a combo system is very simple. You press one key, you attack. Press that key again during the first attack, and the second attack just chains to the previous one. So the solution seems really obvious. You create different animation states inside Unity Animator and just chain them together with different transitions. Then you go and code timers, calculating every single attack length. You add a timer to calculate after how much time your combo needs to reset to 0. Perhaps you add a timer to calculate after how much time the second hit has to start. You add a counter to keep track of how many times the attack button was pressed, and after you've done all of this, you'll probably go crazy because it will not work. The truth is that it doesn't work because the logic behind it is incorrect. You see, as players, we have bad habits regarding video games, and one of them is button mashing during fights. As we button mash our way through our enemies, all attacks shown on the screen seems to be chained, but in fact they are not. Now, if you are a video game artist or perhaps a 3D animator, you should know that every single attack is usually divided into 3 different states. There is an anticipation state where the character charges the attack up. Then there is the attack itself. And at the end of the attack, there is a transition that ends the attack animation and slowly brings it back to the idle. What we really want to do is divide the ending transition from the main attack animation, turning it in an animation of its own. I have already done this. I already have all the different animations we are going to need. So let's open up the animator and add all the animations in. For now, let's be sure not to add any parameters to the different transition. For the one that goes from idle to attack 1, just don't even use ending time. For the one that goes from attack 1 to the first transition back, add ending time and set it to 1, so that the transition will automatically occur on the previous animation end. Now you can add a transition back to idle from the attack 1 transition animation. Once again, set an ending time of 1. Now create another transition from the first transition animation to the second attack animation, and this time with no ending time. Then repeat from attack 2 to transition 2 with an ending time of 1, and from transition 2 back to idle with an ending time of 1. Now let's go and create 2 triggers from idle to attack 1 and from transition 1 to attack 2. Okay, now that we have the animator and the animations all set up, it's time to open up our C# editor and code some behaviors. The first thing we need to do is to create a combat manager script that will enable us to receive an input to attack. This script is going to be extremely simple. It will just have 2 bool variables and 2 really short functions inside of it. So I'm going to call the first boolean can receive input, and it will serve as a flag to detect if the player can actually receive an input to attack. The second one will be called input received and will activate when the attack button of your choice is pressed. Now for the functions, let's go down and create an attack function. In this function, we will make sure that if can receive the input is set to true, then we can set the input received bool to true also by pressing our attack button. As you can see, I am using the Unity new input system at the moment, so I'll also have to subscribe this function to the attack event in order to make it work. But if you're using the old input system, just go with a pretty standard if input get button instead. Of course, if you would like to see a tutorial on the Unity new input system, just hit me up in the comments and I'll be sure to comply. The second function in our combat manager will be a simple input manager function. It will need to be public and we'll just be sure that when called, if our can receive input is set to false, it will become true and vice versa. Now, since we need to be able to interact with this class from all other classes, let's turn this into a public instance of itself by creating a public combat manager variable called instance and adding this whole script inside of it, inside the awake function. Now that we have created our combat manager script with its attack and input manager functions, let's go back to the animator to code some basic behaviors in the states finite state machines. If you don't know what a finite state machine is, well, it basically is a piece of code that only works for the specific state it's attached to. Like, for example, by clicking on the add behavior button here on the idle animation, we can add an idle behavior script that will control only the idle state of our character. As you can see, inside the behavior script, we have all these state functions. The onStateEnter will decide on the behavior that needs to happen when this specific state is entered. Kind of like the standard start method in any other monobehavior, but specific to this particular state. The onStateUpdate decides on the behavior for each update of the state, like a standard update function in a monobehavior. There also is an onStateExit function in case you want some things to happen when the state is transitioning to another state. For our combo system, we just need to work on the update function of this state for now. So let's go there, let's enable it, and just tell it that if the input received boolean from our combat manager instance is set to true, then it needs to activate the trigger for attack 1. And right after that, let's set both the input receiver and the can receive input booleans from the combat manager instance to false. And this is it for our first behavior. Now, let's go to the first transition after attack 1, and let's create a behavior for this one too. Let's call the input manager function when the state is entered to set the can receive input back to true, and in the state update, let's tell it that if input received is true, then it needs to trigger attack 2. And there you go, your combo system is done. As you can see, this is really simple. It doesn't need timers, it doesn't need any kind of complicated code. It's done just with a few lines of coding, and it doesn't break down. If this tutorial has been of any help to you, or if you have an even simpler and better way of creating a basic combo system for your game, please let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for future tutorials and devlogs. From me, this is all for today, so good development everyone. I'll see you next time.